Well, maybe the best way in here is the question of what we call this phenomenon. And my feeling is, and frankly, I faced this all the way back in 2017, right? I find the world is now catching up to the question of whether you call them protesters or rioters is essential. And what I've been saying very clumsily for all of these years is I call the thing that showed up at my classroom, at 10 in the morning on May 23rd, that was a protest, and I say it quickly devolved into riots, which it did. They were barricading buildings. They were kidnapping members of the administration. They assaulted people. They had the police stood down, and then they wandered the campus with weapons. So the point is, protest and riot both have a relevance, but it's actually a temporal shift is what happened. And the same thing happens here in Portland with a twist, which is there is a protest that happens every night, and it predictably turns into a riot. And so, in a sense, this isn't even the situation that happened at Evergreen where things plausibly escalated. This is actually a plan, and in some sense, the protest is there to be captured. For those who are reporting to an audience that wants to hear that Portland is finally standing up against police brutality and that the feds are coming in to institute some kind of fascist thing and they've been repelled by the protesters who valiantly confronted them or something like that. If you're, MSNBC, then the point is, what time to show up to see a protest that's a protest. But if you are engaged in a protest that for sure is going to become a riot later in the evening, you're actually signing up for responsibility for that riot. That's my opinion.
So I'm going to walk back a little bit what I said in terms of the stories in the middle. I think the story's all over. I think that all of these things can be true at the same time. And I'm going to agree with you that say, yes, because there were people that are sort of in the middle. I mean, there really were people that are like, I really want to do something to try to make it better so, Black men are not killed. I mean, they really are trying, but they're not the people really around anymore. And I actually don't think, not from what I've seen. I was in Portland all last week for about a week and a half. The sort of more peaceful protests, they've really died down. You really don't see those anymore. Those people are not marching anymore in front of the building. I did see a nice cavalcade of cars one night going through Northeast Portland. That was super peaceful. They're kind of with flags and tooting and, they're part of the community too. But all of that is sort of now receded. What we have consistently every day now, except not last night, weirdly, and there's some questions about why that was, is we have the Black Bloc, which is the sort of, Antifa-esque arm that believes in, by any method, including violence. And we've got some Black Lives Matter protesters. We've got some randos. We've got some hotheads. We've got some people that are confused. And they do have a plan. And I know that because I have been speaking with several of them. But they're not supposed to talk to you, but they do sometimes because people need to tell you their stories. And they definitely do have a plan. And their plan is basically to get the populace of Portland to mistrust the police enough that it's not just a matter maybe of defunding. It's a matter of the police are not going to be people that you're going to call because you don't trust them anymore. And also because they can't respond, right?
Yeah.
Portland is already down, I think it's about 500 officers than they should be. And then they've got people that are retiring early because who the heck wants to be a Portland police officer in Portland right now? Or they're just resigning and getting the hell out of there and doing something else. So you're down 500 officers, right? And then you can't replace them. Like you can't replace them fast enough. Then
especially if you're defunding, because the obvious way to replace police officers who are fleeing in droves is to make it a more attractive job, effectively pay them for hazard pay. So you're cutting the police at the same point you're demonizing them, which is going to result in fewer, worse police. And it's going to increase the brutality because the point is the brutality is a substitute for resources.
So now we had that horrible incident about a week and a half ago when that guy was pulled out of his car and, beaten downtown. And I was out I think it was the following night or 2 nights later, and I was hanging out with some Black Bloc kids. It was an interesting piece. It's up on Reason. And this one kid who, I don't know if he mistook me for one of his like press people or if he just wanted to talk, but he did. And I said to him, so listen, I know that, Antifa doesn't, rein in anybody else. Everybody do their own thing, different groups. You might not be in charge of this. What do they think about what happened downtown, that guy getting beaten? And he said to me, you know what? The cops know who those kids are. Those are the 7-Eleven kids, and they should have been there. And I was like, yeah, but they're chasing you all around town, right? And he kind of looked at his shoes and with a not very anarchistic sensibility said, yeah, but they should have been there. But how can they be there? I mean, someone told me the other day their car got stolen and they called the cops. The cops are like, sorry, nothing we could do about it.
And if they had been there is no question in my mind that it would have been filmed and portrayed as an abuse of power. So
it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make the police look bad at every turn. And this is very deliberate. This is, being built right now narratively with people's iPhones. That's what's happening.
It is the construction of a false narrative over things that kind of happened, sort of happened, right? You can piece together a very false story out of things, out of edits, basically. The editor rules the narrative in the video age. And the problem is, first of all, this Black Bloc thing goes on all the time in the Pacific Northwest. It's a feature of the landscape, right? And it is LARPing, I believe. But the idea that a confused general outpouring of anger and support after George Floyd's death has now largely dried up and something else has taken up the mantle. But it was doing its thing before this, right? It wasn't.
Absolutely.
It was about tearing down civilization from the beginning. It's been demonizing cops since, Occupy and before.
Yep.
Right? And the point is, it's just continuing to do its thing. But now it has the attention of the world, and it has this cloak that it is using, which has to do with protecting Black people and improving the quality of their lives.
And it's unassailable, right? Because if you complain about it, if you say, guys, like, why don't we sit at the table and talk about this? Then it's like, well, you're a racist. It's like, well, actually not. Like, they feel that whatever they're doing now, they have cloak is exactly right. Whatever they're going to say is unassailable. I'll tell you one more thing just to get back to the editing, and then we'll move on. The first night I was in Portland last month, the federal building stuff was really in high gear. And they attacked the building for about 3 hours, setting fires, trash, burning barbecues, this and that, knocking down fences. And they got in and were tearing off the plywood and smashing it down with a fire extinguisher, something I filmed, by the way. And to show you what people want to see, when I put it online, somebody commented, oh, I can tell Nancy Rommelmann staged that in a studio because, you can see the shininess on it. I'm like, what are you talking about? But anyway, it was about 3 hours into that before the feds shot out their first tear gas. And everybody, kind of ran away at once. And they're pretty organized. Walk, don't run. So people don't get, stampeded. And then you get into the park and the girls, can I wash your eyes? Like, they've got a little pattern going. But everybody was saying, I can't believe they tear gassed us. I'm like, guys, you're setting fire to the building for 3 hours. Like, you want provocation. You want it so bad. You want them to respond to you. So they did. So stop complaining.